And as Steph said, we're going to be diving into some hands-on work with Zenodo. Just a little note that I'm going to be using publishing as well as archiving and preserving data sort of interchangeably for today as regards uploading data to Zenodo. But all of those terms can have slightly different definitions, but for today's purposes, we're going to think of them all as referring to the same set of actions. So we will kick things off by just reviewing why we might want to publish a data set or archive and preserve a data set. The first point is that it helps to increase the fairness of that data. So that's the findability, the accessibility, the interoperability, and the reusability of data. The second point is that publishing data in a robust repository really makes life easier for future you and your future colleagues. This is something that Openscapes talks a lot about. It's something we talked about last time when I was with you talking about metadata. It kind of applies across many of the topics that we are covering. The third point is about getting and giving credit and recognition. So if you publish in a robust repository, you often get a DOI, and we'll talk about this more as we walk through today's materials. But what that does is it allows you to be cited and you to cite other people's data sets. And the final point is that having data archived and preserved with the idea of reuse in the future enables new discoveries and the answering of new research questions, perhaps at broader time or spatial scales than originally conceived. So when we talk about publishing data, you've probably all heard the term repository. It gets used a lot. There are specialist repositories. There are generalist repositories. Specialist repositories are typically focused around a species group or a particular data type or method of collecting data, such as telemetry data. Perhaps it's a particular domain, such as biological oceanography, or perhaps it's an organization that has set up a repository specific to data collected, let's say, by a university or a government agency. Generalist repositories such as Zenodo, which we'll be working with today, typically accept a wide range of publication types. So that it could include data sets, but it could also include other types of information, PDFs, reports, for example, and other types of publications. So I always like to define a repository when talking about them because although you might know and have a working definition in your head, what we're talking about today with a data repository is really a place for the long-term storage of and access to data, where that data is persistently preserved or archived, where it's searchable, where it's findable, for the data can be found and accessed through a data repository. So we'll jump now into publishing in Zenodo. We're going to be walking through this process that you would use to publish in zenodo.org, which is the production Zenodo repository. As I mentioned, it's a generalist repository. There's no cost to upload or publish or archive data there. And as soon as you're ready, you can publish it with the license that you choose. There's no wait time and no curation time on the back end. And it's already in use by a lot of people in the marine and ocean science field, as well as other domains in science and research. But for today's work, we're going to be working in the sandbox. So this is a test space that Zenodo provides for learning and testing data publication. So I want to call your attention to here, which is a screenshot of the Zenodo Sandbox page. And I have this orange box around the banner that you should see when you're logged into the sandbox. And I'm emphasizing this because there are differences in logging in to the sandbox versus production Zenodo. So hopefully you've created your sandbox account already. And we want to make sure that for today's work, we're not publishing, 25 sets of Palmer penguins test data to the production Zenodo. We want to be working in the sandbox because we're learning and testing. Is anyone had any trouble with the sandbox at this point? Please raise your hand or yes, Nikolai.
Yeah, I'm just having trouble actually signing up for Zenodo. I don't know if anybody else had that issue. I tried signing up with my work ID, and while I'm able to log into my work ID outside of the Zenodo link, it doesn't actually let me get in when I click on the link. I'm happy to sort that out myself. Other
Yeah,
people
so
are
this
having that
is
issue, but
so your Orchid account will not enable you to log into the sandbox. You need to use your NOAA email and a password, or you can sign in with a GitHub account. But you will get a message saying your Orchid is invalid. That's not true. It's just that you can't use it to log into the sandbox for Zenodo.
okay. All right. So is it a problem that my Orchid is not associated with my NOAA email? Or
No,
that's not at least the okay. All right. Well
that's
then.
not a problem for today's session.
Okay, well then I'll just try that. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, the files that you will need and the information you'll need today are these two pieces. We have metadata, and that is in the shared notes doc, and that is on page 5. So instead of typing this, you can feel free to copy and paste from this metadata that we're providing for today's exercise. And there's also a link at the top to the test data set that I excerpted from Palmer Penguins. It's called penguins-sandbox.csv. And this is what you'll need to download to your local machine so that you can upload it when you do your Zenodo submission. I want to do a quick callback to our metadata discussion from session number 2, because we talked about 3 different levels of metadata, but today we're going to be working with the project level metadata. So this is the big picture stuff. It includes the minimum that we talked about, which is title, author, source, and license, as well as some other metadata, dates, geographic location, funders, and an abstract. So we're not going to be diving into the file level metadata, such as describing column headings or anything like that. We're just going to be working with this general information at the project level today. And we will be starting out with these 5 different fields of really basic metadata. So these will be the first things that we'll fill out in our Zenodo submission today. So title, authors or creators, those 2 terms are often used interchangeably in metadata. DOI, a resource type. In this case, that will be dataset. And a publication date. So now I'm going to walk through this process so that you can see how this works in Zenodo before you have a chance to do this on your own. So here I am logged into Zenodo. I can see my username up here in the top right. And I also, again, check this when you're logged in, check that you see this banner that says you're in the sandbox. So that's a good way to make sure that you're in the correct location for today's exercise. Under this little plus sign, I'm going to select New Upload. And I then am directed to a blank page where I can upload files. So the first thing I'll do is upload a file. And this will be the penguins-sandbox CSV. And that shouldn't take long. It's a very small test file. And there we go. We can see that this file has uploaded to our submission. The second thing we'll do is get a digital object identifier. So if you know the Palmer Penguins dataset, you probably already know it actually has a DOI. But for today's exercise, we're going to say, no, I need a DOI. And then press the Get a DOI Now button. And what this does is it reserves a unique identifier for this data submission. And it reserves it until you press this Publish button. The next thing we'll do is we'll select resource type. This is a data set, so we'll select that option. And the other piece of metadata that we will fill out is the title. So this is where you can just go to the shared notes doc and copy, paste into the title field here. Publication date is the last piece of information we'll be entering right now. And actually Zenodo auto-populates this with today's date for us. That's what we're going to leave it as. But if you had a reason to change this to a different date, you can change it. If I wanted to say it was December 17th in 2020, I could change that. But we'll just leave, for today's purposes, we'll leave this as today's date. I'll also draw your attention that it tells you what format you need to enter the date in, whether that's a single date or it's an interval date. And this conforms to the ISO 8601 standard. So if you're like to nerd out about metadata standards. But you don't have to know that because they just describe it right here for the format that you need to use. Let's see. I will go back. We need to add creators. So that's the last thing I need to add right now. So I will add myself as a creator. There are a couple of different ways you can do this. The easiest is to copy your ORCID and then put that into this search bar here at the top. And it should pull your ORCID record with your name, and just click on your name. And then it will auto-populate your first and last names, and it puts your identifier here. Now, if you haven't logged into Zenodo before, you might encounter a situation where this search does not pull up your information. That's fine. Enter your name manually into the two name fields, and then you can paste your ORCID into the identifiers section and it will add you. And then press save, and I am now listed as a creator of this data set. So I can save the draft. In the top right here, we have several options. I will save this draft. And you can save this and come back to it in a day or a week or a month and edit it. In this case, we're ready to go. So I'm going to just preview it, make sure it looks right. This is a preview of what the published page will look like. It looks good to me. And then in the top left, I'll go back to edit page. And I'm ready to publish. So this big green publish button, uh, and this will say, are you sure? And we say, yes, we want to publish. And there we go. We've published our data set with some very basic metadata. But that's really all you need to do to get a record published in Zenodo. So now, just to review what we did, we added a file, we got a DOI, we selected a resource type, we added a title, publication date, and creators. We saved and published our data set. So that is what it's your turn now to do. And we will send you to breakout rooms in just a minute. I want to remind you that in the notes for this section, there are the 5 things that we want you to add. So one thing that didn't come up in our discussion, but you might have questions about as we go back in and edit our metadata for this record you've just created. And that is that metadata can be updated in Zenodo records without changing the version of the record itself. So that's without getting a new DOI. So that's what we're going to do now in just a minute. But I want to point out that if you were to upload another CSV file along with our test data set, or if you were to upload a PDF that contained additional information to the record we just created, that would prompt a versioning of the entire record and the issuing of a new version-specific DOI. So that's one of the benefits I see of the way Zenodo handles versioning is that you get an overall DOI that refers to the entire record, but then each version of your publication gets a new DOI. So you can go back and cite a specific version, or you can cite the entire record itself. So what we'll do now is we'll go back into editing our submission to Zenodo, and we'll make the metadata a bit richer. And we'll add these 3 things. One is to add a description or an abstract or a short summary. The second is to add contributors. So this gets a bit to our discussion where Andy highlighted that you can add other roles and other people to a submission in addition to a author. So one of the important things to have for a data set is always to have a contact person. That's somebody who can, if you have questions about the data set, you want to reuse the data set, you can get in touch with this contact person. So that's something a role we'd like you to add to this data set. In addition to that, we'd like you to add ORCIDs for people if you haven't already added them. Try adding someone in your breakout room as a contributor, add their ORCID to your record. And the final thing we'd like to add to the metadata is the funder name and the funder research organization registry identifier. So that's the ROR. So I'll walk through what this looks like now. And here we are back with the Zenodo Sandbox record here. And I want to click this orange edit button to get back into editing mode. And I'm going to start by adding a description. So if you scroll down just below creators, we see this description box, and I will copy paste from our note stock the abstract that was listed there, just a couple sentences. It's a short description. It's not really even an abstract, but it will serve for today's purposes of describing this data set a little bit further. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a contributor. So this is under the category of recommended information. And this dialog box looks similar. I want to add a person who's a contributor, and I'm going to add this person using their DOI. And I will paste that into the search box. And I'm adding Stephanie as a contributor to my data set. And it auto-populated her affiliation, her identifier, and her name. But if you notice here, this role field has a little asterisk by it. So I need to select a role. She's going to be the contact person for my data set. So she's the one somebody will reach out to if they have questions, and then save. And now you can see Stephanie is listed as a contributor and as a contact person for this data set. We also want to add funder information. So if we scroll down a little bit further, we find the big blue funding banner here, and we can click on add. If we click on add, we get a search box for a set of grants and awards that Zenodo has listed. I've found that many times the funder or the award information is not in this list. So usually I try to add a custom bit of information. And this seems to allow me to add the information that I need in most cases. So the funder listed in our metadata is the LTER network, and the ROR is also listed there. So I'm going to copy the ROR and add the funder that way. So I'm going to search by the ROR number, and you can see it pulls up the LTER network using that ROR. And then I just add that as my funder. There are other categories here you notice have asterisks. They're not required. You can X those out and they go away. But you could also fill in this information if you have, let's say, related works. This is where you could list a DOI for a journal article that may be associated with this data set, for example, or any other sort of related works you can link via identifiers there. And there's many other metadata fields that you may or may not find relevant to whatever record you may be publishing at this time. But for our purposes for today, that is the additional metadata we'll be adding. And so after you're done adding that, we want to save it. We can preview it again if we would like to. Looks good to me. And back to edit, and then we will publish this. And yes, we're sure we want to publish. And then we can see that our record has been updated with Stephanie as the contributor and the contact person. We now have this description above our data file. And that's how our record looks with a few more metadata fields filled out. So now it is your turn once again to head back over to your record and edit the record to add this additional information.